Hey, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. I'm recording this on a Sunday. You're probably watching this on a Monday or Tuesday. And if you hear something rattling against the ceiling, it's my dog is playing up there with my daughter. What I want to talk about today in class here is symbolism. And hopefully I won't be distracted by the bone that keeps hitting there. And I don't know why my hands are kind of like glowing, but that's kind of cool. Um, so symbolism is something that you probably never discussed in elementary school because, quite frankly, like children's brains in elementary school, they're not developed enough that most elementary students can understand what symbolism is. And most experts, I'm not an expert, but they say, like, don't even try to teach symbolism until at least the seventh grade. So maybe in the sixth grade, you heard a little bit about it, maybe in the seventh grade, but by the eighth grade, most people who study these things think that students can sort of understand symbolism because it is quite deep. It's not actually on the page. You're probably never going to talk about symbolism outside of English class. But for those who care, those who really like English class, symbolism can add a whole nother level to your reading, a much deeper level. I understand there are probably some people in the eighth grade. I might have been one of them when I was in the eighth grade. It's like, I don't care. I don't care. But it's really not going away. And probably as you get older in English class, your English teachers will talk more and more about symbolism, but it is just kind of an English class thing. I mean, you could, we will talk about movies in a minute, the Marvel universe, they actually use symbolism quite a bit, but it's almost always only in a fictional world. I mean, not always. I mean, sometimes politicians will use symbolism and that kind of thing, but English teachers really love this stuff. So let's talk a little bit about what symbolism is. I have spoken about it in class, I think once. I used the American flag as an example. So, at its most basic core, right, the American flag is just a piece of cloth dyed red, white, and blue. Right? That's it. But it has stripes. Those represent something else. And they have little stars on them. And they're not just little stars, they represent the 50 states, or they are symbolic of the 50 states. So authors will do that quite often. They might put in an empty chair in the corner, which literally could just be an empty chair, but it also could represent, or it could be symbolic of a family member who is off fighting in a war and is not able to be at Thanksgiving dinner. So the author will put that in the corner just as a reminder, there's an empty seat. That's what we're talking about with symbolism. And guess what? There's often no right, like definitive answer. There's no answer that without a doubt is correct. And the opposite is true. There's no answer that's completely wrong as long as you can back that up. Now, if you say that, and don't ask me why McDonald's Big Macs are on my mind, but they're kind of always on my mind. I like McDonald's a little bit too much. But if you said that author put that empty chair in the corner to symbolize McDonald's Big Mac, and the story never mentioned a McDonald's Big Mac, it's like, I don't know where you got that. Probably not. But if you can find some evidence from the text that the author has mentioned before, or maybe later on, then you could be right. But the thing is, with symbolism, you need to back it up with evidence. It's got to make sense. You have to somehow connect the dots. So in the short story that we will be reading this week, and when I say short story, just be prepared. It's a little bit longer than the short story we read earlier called Red Apples. but not quite as long as Baby Kill Unicorn. Okay. We're going to be reading a story called The Medicine Bag. And part of the medicine bag, a big part of it will be how some of the objects in the medicine bag are going to be symbolic. They're going to represent other things. So oftentimes, since I talked about red roses are often symbolic of love. So we just read that story. And all, like, I don't know the language of flowers, but I think like red roses are symbolic of love, but yellow roses, I think, are symbolic of friendship. So there's a whole language of these flowers. Like white, I don't know, is often maybe something for a wedding or something. Yeah, I don't know. Purple. Oh, purple with colors. Purple often represents royalty, like a king or a queen, something like that. Paper towns. I didn't want to mention this as we were reading because I wanted to get on to the story. But during the prologue, right, there's a mention of these strings and how the dead guy who shot himself, maybe all the strings inside him broke. So that could be symbolic. Nobody has strings, actual strings inside them, but you can imagine maybe like if you've ever played tennis. And so I'll use a symbol here. So if the tennis racket, if it's wound too tightly, all the strings could break, and maybe that's what happened to that man. Like he was just like had so much stress, all the strings broke. Another part, though, it's in the same scene where Margot Roth Spiegelman goes to Q's window. They're still little kids. They're little 9-year-old kids. And the screen is in between them. The screen is in between them. That screen could represent how there is something that has come between them. Like literally, that screen is between them, but figuratively. That's the opposite of literally. Literally means it's actually happening. Figuratively means it's not really happening. And English teachers love figurative language. There could be that divide between them. There's some small little barrier between them now so that they can't be those close friends that they once were. The author says that the screen pixelated Margot in Q's eyes. If you know that word pixelated, it's just like a screen. Like if you look at a screen, like if you have my upstairs, we have a sliding glass door. Well, there's also a screen that you can open, let the fresh air in, but the bugs won't come in. So that screen with the little black squares, it was breaking up Margot. So if seeing that dead guy broke her strings, that screen could represent that kind of in the real world, how Q said that she was pixelated. So she was broken up into little pieces. If that makes sense to you, I mean, it's a deeper way to think, then your brain might be ready to start thinking about reading in a different way, in a deeper way. And I know that at 13 or 14, like, your brains are still developing. I mean, you probably don't want to hear this, but, when you're not, you might think you're ready for the adult world, but you probably have some maturing to do. Even at 45, I'm still maturing. I think I'll be a better person at 55, but we're not necessarily talking about better. It's just like your brain will start developing more, and then you may be able to start thinking about this reading in a deeper way. So I know it might be a little bit of a stretch to think of how that screen, literally the screen that separates them, could represent something bigger, like a divide in their two lives. But that's what mostly English teachers do when they talk about symbolism. But I also feel like I need to sneeze. Hang on. I don't have a cough button. Excuse me. If you weren't awake before, maybe you are. My allergies have been absolutely horrible. So let's take a look at if you are into the whole Marvel universe. I found now actually before we do that, let's take a look at the actual textbook. No, hang on. I am sharing it. All right. Let me make this a little bigger. So this is the actual textbook. I would love to give you the opportunity to log into this textbook. However, it took me like 5 times to log in as a teacher. I can only imagine how difficult it will be to log in as a student. So I haven't been able to log in like on the first try that many times. I think it's happened a couple times, but not that many. So this is the medicine bag. Again, we will be reading this later on. But if you see this like little gray box here, this is what I want to talk about. So figurative meaning, not literal. Most young children, first, second graders, they think very literally, very literally. And now I'm getting a message that my internet isn't working that great. Hopefully I'm not breaking up. I'll use, I had a cousin, right? When we were younger, he's a little bit younger than me. Might have been 5 years old when we were staying at a campground. And my mother wanted us to go up to the campground store and buy something. I can't remember what it was. Maybe laundry detergent or something to wash clothes. I can't remember. But she said to me and my cousin, hey, why don't you skip up to the store and get me some laundry detergent? So I was like, okay. I took the money. So my cousin and I, we were going together. Like he literally started skipping. He thought my mom wanted us to skip up to the store. Now, 13, 14, and 45, we probably know like skip up just means I make a quick trip, right? Make a quick trip. He thought literally you should skip up there. So little kids have trouble thinking figuratively, thinking in a bigger way. But let's take a look at this here when they say figurative language right here. A symbol is anything that stands for or represents something else. Symbolism is the use of symbols. What happens when we, so just a little bit deeper meaning. We don't have to, maybe we should. Let's read it. A symbol is anything that stands for or represents something else. Symbols are common in everyday life. A dove, maybe you've heard of that, with an olive branch is a symbol of peace. Now, how a dove and an olive branch represent peace, I don't know. There's probably some backstory, but a lot of people realize that if you see a dove in literature, you're like, oh, that could be a symbol for peace. A blindfolded woman holding a balanced scale represents the symbol of justice. You may see this in courtrooms somewhere. It's like they say justice is blind. A crown is a symbol of a king or queen's status and authority. Okay, those are types of symbols. Symbolism, that's what we're talking about. We don't really actually have to read that. Symbols are common in everyday life as well as literature. For an example, we already read that. Why are they telling us this twice? This is good though, right here. Symbolism can also add levels of meaning to a text. So if you want to read a little bit deeper into it, you can. Let's not talk about this quite yet, because when we get into the story, I do want you to know that there are some, see the medicine bag right there. Maybe I'll highlight this so we remember. But he's gonna carry a medicine bag, much like a doctor does. And it's gonna have some tools in there. The medicine bag could be more than just a bag. It could represent something else. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is some of the symbolism in Marvel movies. For me to do that, I have to do this, and then I have to change the way I share the screen. So let's see how quickly I can do this. Maybe quite quickly. Well, now I can't. Yeah. Okay. And there are going to be a bunch of ads. I try to get rid of as many ads as possible, but they keep popping up. But I'm not paying for this. So this is from Ranker. if you want to read more about this, you can just Google search Ranker, Symbolism, MCU. This thing will pop up. And we don't have to go through all of them, but there are quite a few. So if you've ever seen the Civil War movie, now I think most people probably have, unless you're somebody that hates the Marvel universe. Sorry, but I'll briefly explain it here. This dude, Captain America. We could also talk about how his suit is symbolic of who he is as a character. You know, he feels that he's always representing what's good, the United States. But I mean, we could go way into it with talking about how the United States is not always right. The United States has kind of messed things up in the past. I think the United States tries to do the right thing, just like Cap tries to do the right thing, but sometimes he's on the opposite side of what's right, or at least what he thinks is right with the whole Iron Man thing. But I did not notice this. It says in Captain America Civil War, I can't believe that movie is already like 5 years old. Prior to the Sokovia Accords, Steve has his Avengers logo, but later at the airport scene, you can see he's removed it. So I really can't see with that picture, but that Avengers logo, wherever it is, oh, is it over here maybe? So if he has that Avengers logo on at the beginning of the movie, that patch could symbolize his feelings like, hey, I'm still part of this group. I'm a big fan of the Avengers. But if at some point he removes that, that could be symbolic of his feelings, the way they've changed. You could watch the movie just like I did and have no knowledge of the patch being removed. But if you happen to catch it, or if you read about it like we are, it might add a deeper meaning to the movie. That patch. When it's there, he feels attached to the Avengers. That patch is attached to his uniform. He rips it off, just like his relationship with the Avengers. It has been ripped. It has been torn. Hopefully you see how symbolism works there. It's an object, but it can represent something bigger. Let's look at another one. Vision contemplates his role in Civil War while holding a particular chess piece. From that picture, I can't tell what that chess piece is. But from this caption here, I realize at the end of Captain America Civil War, Vision is seen contemplating the role he has played in the catastrophe he had predicted. He is holding a rook, the only chess piece that represents a thing instead of a person. I did not know that a rook is the only thing that represents a thing. I mean, you have the horse there, you have the pawn there. So if we're going with this, he's holding the rook. The only thing that doesn't represent a person, and if you know anything about the Marvel universe, Vision's not really a person. He was created AI. He was Tony Stark's just a voice for so long in the movies, and so he's definitely not a person. If you've seen the Wanda Vision series, there's a whole bunch of stuff of how he's not a real person there. I didn't know this. Everyone who supports Cap in Civil War refuses to move, like physically move at one time or another. And you can look through all of this. It just could, the fact that they are not moving, it could represent how they are stubborn or they're stuck in their ways. Depends on whose point of view you see this from. So there's that. Agent Stillwell. I didn't know about this, but if someone is two-faced, it might be symbolic of them having like a secret life or being like very nice on the outside, but being secretly evil on the inside. So kind of a cool thing there. Definitely symbolism. Tony's ship at the beginning of Endgame symbolizes an end to his voyage. Had no idea about this either, but apparently a swallow is a symbol that marks the end of a traveler's adventure. So if you were like me and you had no idea that this bird represented the end of a traveler's adventure, yeah, probably went right over your head, like mine. But now, if you rewatch the movie, you're like, oh, they could have made that ship into any design. And the fact that some people think it looks like a swallow, a type of bird, well, maybe it's a little bit of a stretch. It's hard to argue, though. Spoiler alert, what happens at the end of Endgame. We don't have to go into that, but hopefully by now you've seen that 2-year-old movie, almost 3 years, a 2.5-year-old movie. And then there are more, but this will be the last one we go over. But right here, if you've ever seen Black Panther, very famous. If you look at the two different weapons, so it says Killmonger and T'Challa's weapons symbolize their intrinsic beliefs. If something is intrinsic, it's like inside of you, like deep in your core. And what they're saying here, these people right here, I guess they're giving credit to that person, that T'Challa here is using a shield. It's a very defensive weapon. So he is not one to go out and seek a fight. Meanwhile, Killmonger is using a blade. We call this a rapier from our old vocabulary words. That is meant for slashing and cutting. It's definitely an offensive weapon. So those two weapons could also represent how they feel on the inside. One is looking for a fight. One is not looking for a fight, but is willing to defend himself and his beliefs when something is important. All right, how about that? That's going to be it for now. I hope that you understand what symbolism is. If not, we'll be talking about it throughout the year, little by little, and hopefully by the end of the year, it will make more sense as you become familiar with the topic. All right,